All right, well, it got everybody's attention. So it's 1 o'clock. Thank you all for coming to the debate on the mayoral candidates. Excuse me, may I? Pardon? So, thanks all for coming. Thank you to the candidates for coming. Thank you very much to the Village Green for hosting this. So the way it's going to work is I'm making my very brief introduction, then the two candidates, Lisa Janairo, Emily Kuhn, they are each going to make a personal statement. I'm going to ask a couple of questions, then they get to ask each other a few questions, and then we are going to open it up to questions from you. We don't know exactly how long it's going to go, an hour, maybe an hour and a half. When questions start getting repetitive and when people start making more speeches than asking questions, then we're going to shut it down. Right, so we're going to get started right away. Oh, by the way, there's Jeremy. He is recording the whole thing, thanks to the city. And it's going to be posted on the city's YouTube channel soon. So we drew lots about who's going to go first. Lisa is going to go first in her personal statement.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lisa Janairo. I'm the Alder for District 6, and I'm running to be Middleton's next mayor. I have a vision of Middleton as a place where we meet the needs of our growing city, where our sense of community is strong, and where people have access to good information about what our city government does and how it affects all of us. This vision is shared by the people who last year approached me to ask me to run for mayor. It's shared by the dozens of people who are volunteering to support the campaign, making donations. It's shared by the over 150 people who have now endorsed my campaign. These are voters in Middleton, people like you, who have decided they want a change in leadership, and they've decided to back me. Our campaign is about moving Middleton forward together. And moving forward together, those aren't just words. They actually mean something. So moving. We are a growing city. A city that has a thriving economy is going to grow. We can't stop that growth, nor should we want to, because it is good for our community. What we need to do is manage that growth in a way that preserves what makes Middleton special. And what makes Middleton special isn't necessarily how our city looks. What makes it special is how our city feels, how we act towards one another. We make this the Good Neighbor City. We don't just call ourselves that. So moving, we're growing. The second part is forward. We can't continue to do things the way we always have. We need to be able to adapt to changes, such as those coming from the federal government, or climate change, which keeps getting worse. Doing the same things we've always done, that just won't cut it in today's rapidly changing world. And then finally, together. This is my favorite part, because I feel strongly that Middleton's greatest asset is its people. Whether it is the elected officials who volunteer their time to serve, or the city committee members. We have so many people who volunteer every month to participate in decision-making on behalf of the city. That is a huge sacrifice, and I greatly appreciate all the folks who do it, and I want to expand our reach so that we bring in even more residents who are willing to devote their time to helping our city make decisions. It's the school district, which is phenomenal and actually attracts a lot of people to our city. It's our Chamber of Commerce, which is thriving. If you've never gone to a chamber event, you've got to check it out, because I was overwhelmed at how many people are not just showing up at meetings, but actually engaging with one another. So I believe that if we all row in the same direction at the same time, there is literally nothing we can't do to make Middleton a better and more welcoming place than it already is. So that is my moving forward campaign. I thank you all for being here today, and I look forward to hearing hearing your questions about what you want to see in Middleton's future and what kind of characteristics you want to see in your next mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to Alder Janairo. It is very inspiring. And one of the things that I do as a leader is I work with a lot of people and stakeholders across the city. I say that because I serve because I care. I care about those who live here and our neighbors that are visiting, whether it's for dinners out or to an event like this, or whether they work here. And part of the reason that I stepped up initially to run was because we were looking at a loss of 30% of our leadership in the city of Middleton on our workforce. And having worked in federal government for 2 decades, I know how to work and onboard, train, and coach those leaders because you want the long-term succession management of a city. It is what we do every day that makes a difference in the community, but ensuring greatness over time is critical. We have seen the end of ARPA funding in 2020, in the 2024-25 era, and the federal government is no longer giving us those funds. When I talked to mayors across the country last summer, they were astounded at the fiscal cliff that was happening. Here in Middleton, because we work together, we did not have that crisis. And I'm so proud of our council for working with us. You know, they work with staff, they work with me, and we do this together to serve our public. We say that because, or I say that, because I routinely work with all of the leaders across the city. There's 13 departments. And I want to make sure that the safety of the public is critical. In 2023, when I ran, I heard from seniors who were worried about not affording their property taxes, that they wanted to stay in their neighborhood. And leadership at the council level has helped keep those property taxes in a place where people can afford to stay or find new options, because maybe they're choosing a smaller house. But we have brought so many houses on board in these 3 years. And at the same time, I work to keep the Thermo Fisher PDD company here and not move to the East Coast and keep the economy solid. It is critical for our workforce to have a job and be able to commute so close to home. It is critical for our school district to have those families stay. These are my children's friends. And the community thrives when we all do it together. So a lot of the things that my opponent is talking about, I fully agree. And I'm really glad we're having these debates today because we want to get from here to move the community forward. And if there's ways we can do it together, then I think we should have these conversations and enjoy today's time. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one question. It's the same for both of you. You both have visions for what Middleton should be like, and you both want the best for the city of Middleton and its residents. But in the Middleton system of government, it is a weak mayor, strong council, and essentially the mayor is the eunuch in Middleton politics. You have responsibility without power. So how do you, the things that you promise or your visions, how do you actually want to get them done? Who wants to go first? Emily will go first.
Okay, so help me with that question again. There was a little bit of there were some other things. So best for the city to move forward, weak mayor, strong council. Oh, how do I want to get things done?
Since you don't have a vote on the council except to break a tie, and basically the only power you have is to appoint members to committees and commissions, but they have to be confirmed by the council, and in the past has shown that that's not always the case. So how do you want to get things done? Since you don't have the power, but you get the blame.
Very good question. You know, when I started as mayor, I asked the city staff, what is the #1 call that you get every single day? And I asked them to take a look and see what we could do different as a process to stop those calls from coming in. Not that we don't want calls from the public, but if we're not doing good outreach, then we're getting systematic phone calls and constant reach outs. And they saw the power of that because the people who answered the phone the most had a 30% reduction within 6 weeks. That is something I learned in federal service, is you find out what the top 3 questions are, and you give them the answers in FAQ. Then I sat out and I talked to the directors and said, what are the pain points? When you work with your staff, when you work with the public, what is within our control? And so I worked to streamline a lot of processes. One of the biggest problems we had in City Hall was that they couldn't get a conference room at a moment's notice if there's a crisis. And I said, all right, well, what's your plan for that? And city staff said, let's get a new building. I said, that would be great, but that's not tomorrow. So I actually gave up the mayor's office because it would sit 14 people comfortably. So I knew all the directors could talk to the city administrator at any time. And so part of the way you get things done is you find the biggest problems and you remove the barriers. The other thing you do is you talk with the directors to find out what are the high call volume rates and how do we deploy resources and staff in a way that does not wear out the staff. And we can't grow over time, we can't grow number of staff. There's a lot of things we can't do. But the reason I say that is I taught the directors to all brief me in 2 minutes time on a routine basis so that they could tell me all the hot topics so that when I get calls from the public, I already am aware of it or I know where to send it to. And in doing that, the former EMS director let me know that the highest call volume they had was the Behavioral Health Center in 2023. And he said that at the rate that it's going, we're going to have a new paramedic at $1 million, a new truck, as well as high call volume to our police officers, so we'll need more police. And I said, what's your idea to move it forward? And he gave me his plan, and we moved it forward. And call volume to that location, I think, also dropped about 30 to 50%, because we asked them to do their part. So a lot of times, moving the city forward is going through the streamlining of processes and figuring out how to deploy resources and staff time in a reasonable manner so that we, at the end of the day, can take on those bigger projects.
Thank you. So in essence, George, your question is, what is the role of the mayor in a weak mayor system, right? And I guess I would approach it a little differently than Mayor Kuhn did. First of all, the city has excellent staff, and we have an extremely capable city administrator whose job is to make sure the staff carry out our plans and our policies and that they're following council's direction. So the mayor does not get involved in any of that, does not need to get involved, and actually should not be involved in those functions, because that is not what a weak mayor does in our system. I talked about moving forward together. I talked about what my vision is for meeting our needs, strengthening our sense of community, and making sure people have information. These are things that someone in a weak mayor system can do. And here's what I would do. Starting with keeping people informed and making sure they have access to good information. That is something I already do as an alderperson. I'm the only elected official in Middleton who does a regular monthly newsletter to my constituents. Anybody in the room receive my newsletter? Thank you. I hear all the time feedback from people saying, this is the best source of local news about government that I've ever seen. I know more about what's happening in the city now thanks to your newsletter. They don't always agree with the decisions I make, but I explain to them what I am doing and why, how I came to making my decisions. But I have seen directly how my information that I'm sharing with the readers of my newsletter has changed their view and their understanding of city government. So that is an important role that the Mayor Janairo can have in our weak mayor system. I'm also all about building relationships. I spent 30 years working in the field of public policy, specifically on radioactive waste transportation and management, and then also Great Lakes restoration and protection. I had to work on a nonpartisan basis with the Great Lakes work because it brought together legislators from the 8 states in the Great Lakes region and 2 Canadian provinces. And we had to make sure it was as evenly balanced among the parties in the US, not the Canadian ones, but the Republicans and Democrats. And we had to find common ground. That is how we approached everything. I looked for areas of agreement and we built from there. That is something I would like to do as mayor. Build those relationships. We have good relations, I'll say, with the school district and the Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Middleton Business Association, but we don't work together on projects. We're tangential. There's no overlap in our circles. I had the opportunity to make those circles overlap when Way Forward Resources reached out to me last October to say, we have a crisis. We're about to lose SNAP benefits temporarily for a lot of the guests coming here, and we need to get out 2 messages. One, we want to make sure people understand they don't need to panic. There is food available at Way Forward right now, and we want them to be able to access that food. 2, we need to let the community know that we want to continue to have food for our neighbors well into the future, so we need their help. And the question was posed, how do we get these 2 messages out without causing a panic? And I worked with the folks at Way Forward. I reached out to the school district and to the Chamber of Commerce, and within 48 hours, we had the same message going out. We brought in the Downtown Middleton Business Association, and all 5 of us pushed that same message out, and the results were outstanding. That's the kind of thing I did in my job. That is the kind of thing I have demonstrated I can do as an alder, and that is the kind of thing even a weak mayor can do. Because the mayor doesn't run the city. The mayor doesn't manage the city. That's the city administrator's job, and he's doing a great job. But the mayor sets the tone, and the mayor builds those relationships, and the mayor meets with people to hear what are their concerns. How can we address those concerns? What ideas do you have for making Middleton a better, more welcoming place for everyone? That is what I see as contributions I can bring. Formally, the mayor also traditionally has had the responsibility of chairing the Planning Commission and the Community Development Authority. These are the 2 bodies that have the greatest direct influence on what our city looks like. Mayor Kuhn does not chair either of those. She quit after 1 year on the Planning Commission and 2 years for CDA. I will participate, and I will serve as chair on both of those when I'm elected mayor.
All right, now it's time for you to ask each other questions. Lisa, you could ask, please, the first one.
Okay, that's gone. Okay. Gone.
George and Andrew, I really appreciate your effort to try to be innovative and give us each an opportunity to ask questions of one another. But the more I thought about it and talked with my team, the more we decided, as well-intentioned as that approach might be, it just seems to lend itself to gotcha questions or mudslinging or trying to paint each other in a negative light. And I am not interested in any of that. So I would rather hear from the audience, so I will give up my opportunity to ask questions. And I look forward to hearing what the audience has to say later.
Thank you. Emily?
I appreciate that insight. My question to you is, what is your leadership philosophy?
Well, I guess I would say my leadership philosophy is to bring people together, listen to the people. I demonstrate this as chair, well, when I used to chair the Finance and Personnel Committee. My belief is that when you're leading a group, you do the least talking. You set the table, you introduce the topics, you maybe frame what the conversation is going to be about, and then you sit back and you listen to what people have to say. That is what leadership looks like to me. It is not imposing my ideas on my fellow committee members. It is going to them first, and I did this routinely as chair of finance and personnel. A motion would be made, and we would hear discussion from the members first, and then I would step in and ask questions. But I always let them go first. I also think it's important to collaborate with the other members of the common council. The mayor is a member. I will seek out from my colleagues on council. I'll find out what committees would you like to be appointed to, because I feel like we'll get the best work out of our council members if they are appointed to committees where they have an interest, maybe they have some expertise that fit their schedules because they meet at different times, right? And a lot of our members still have day jobs or other gigs. So I will be collaborative with the council. I would love to see our council initiate a system of mentoring so that new council members coming in get a chance to learn from others. I think leadership involves, this goes back to my career when I worked for an association of state governments. It's consulting with other leaders who have the same problems your municipality has. And so I'm very active in the Dane County Cities and Villages Association. It's an association throughout Dane County of the cities and villages, and I serve on the executive board, and my fellow council members know that almost every meeting during the discussion period I'll say, there's a meeting coming up of TCCVA, or there's a webinar. Make sure you take advantage of this, because since I do that, I have been approached from an alderperson in Fitchburg to say, hey, I met you at a meeting and I know you're interested in complete streets. And there's this thing called Week Without Driving that was started by disability rights groups in Washington State. The idea is to call attention to what our infrastructure looks like from the vantage point of someone who does not own a car, does not use a car, cannot drive a car. So I participate in that. I had another, just recently, council passed or did our first reading of an ordinance to restrict sales of THC containing products to minors. Who knew that they could buy those, right? Well, an alderperson from Madison reached out to me to say, hey, I met you at a meeting, we talked about this thing, and we just passed this ordinance, thought you might be interested. So my leadership philosophy is to learn from others, engage with others, adopt those best practices, and look for ways, in consultation with the people who have blazed the trail before, look for ways to improve upon what others have done.
Do you have any other questions for Lisa?
I prepared two. So I would like to know, what is your proudest moment in the time that you've served on council?
Wow. Thank you for that question. My proudest moment. Well, I already talked about the community-wide food drive. I was really proud about that. But I guess I'll say I was most proud when the city finally, after 3 years, made it official that we were acquiring 14 acres of conservancy land in District 6, my district that I represent, and we were acquiring it for free from the defunct development company that built the subdivision I live in. I live on Whittlesey Road, it's Pheasant Ridge subdivision, and for anybody who's been up there, there's a path that goes behind the houses across the street from mine. And I used to walk my dog there all the time and look to the north and see this just abandoned land. It was, conservancy land, but obviously a lot of invasives. And I used to wonder, this is before I even became a council member, I used to wonder, what's going on here? Why is nobody, Why is this not part of our conservancy land? Who owns it? Can it be developed? Because there were a lot of turkeys and coyotes and a lot of wildlife there, and it seemed like it was a wetland. And when I finally was on council, I asked our planning director, who owns this land? I can see from Access Dane who the official owner is, but why isn't this an outlet that belongs to the city? That conversation led her to go back, talk to the city attorney after researching the files, and it took 3 years, but eventually, they tracked down the one remaining official from that now bankrupt or defunct development corporation, and when the quitclaim deed came back, signed by that person, and I knew we had obtained that parcel, that was a super proud moment for me. And throughout that whole period, I was working closely with the Friends of Pheasant Branch too, because they independently had been researching it and trying to figure out. So seeing an idea go from just me asking a question and the staff taking that lead and running with it and getting information from the Friends, that was one of my proudest moments, to be able to say that 14 acres came into the city because of something I started.
Any other? All right. Well, thank you. So now we're going to take questions from you. We only have the one microphone, so I'm going to be doing a lot of running around because I'll give you the microphone, then I'll bring it back. Please, when you ask your questions, indicate if it's for Emily or Lisa or for both. So I already had a hand up down there.
Yes,
I'm on my way.
thank you. It's for the mayor. I have a question regarding...
You need to use the microphone.
Thank you. This is for the mayor. I have a question regarding that enormous housing project going up on Allen Boulevard that's painted in a sky blue. You cast the deciding vote for that. So it came down to doing it by the Supreme Soviet method. One vote okayed that conglomeration there. I would like to know what caused you to cast that vote in favor of that apartment complex, where those cars are going to park since it doesn't have any underground parking, how they're going to access Allen Boulevard, and do you now, in front of all these people, vow, if you're reelected, you will not approve any more building on those former soccer fields?
Thank you for your question. I really appreciate it. It is a hot topic across the city to do density. And I will share that Alder Janairo, being on Plan Commission, was also supportive of it. Is that fair? Okay. I'm glad that you're asking me as mayor, because the buck stops here. And I have no problem saying that. And I feel that Alder Janairo would say the same thing. Like, I'm not saying this is her fault, but I'm saying if she was the mayor, she would take that ownership. So I feel comfortable answering your questions. Okay. So I was the casting vote, and you wanted to ask me why. Here is the reason. We spent a lot of years on other apartments that were also not in favor of by a lot of people. Those projects ended up going to court, and I knew that at the end of the day, a property owner can develop things if it's within, the mapping system. At the same time, we are being tasked with developing a lot of housing in the county. The county is asking us constantly. They're telling us we're going to have, Alder Janairo is at, another 500,000 people by 2050. Is that, yeah, at the county level, not in the city. They want us all to take our portion. I have often told them we have 3 firm sides of the city, 3 firm boundaries. There's not a lot of room left. We can't take our portion. Someone else has to take a turn. And I say that because there's a lot of land in our neighbors, like say Fitchburg, Stoughton. They have lots of land down there. They can start building some of these housing as well, some of these taller buildings. But you asked me the why. It is on a transit route. We said that we would dedicate land, for development and fill on transit routes. One of my concerns is that if we don't build things where it's already on a transit route, we will have to build into the prairie and have more transit routes that way. So a little bit of back and forth of where development is going and what the city expects. They really want that land left for single-family homes and townhomes. There'll be a couple apartment buildings. So my reason was looking at the health of the city long-term. There were a lot of people who said to me, we need more parks, and they're not wrong in the city. However, that location right there has Marshall Park, which is Madison, but it's right there, and Lakeview Park, which is in Middleton, across the way. We also have 2 smaller parks within a half mile. Parking. There will be parking right there. It's paved. You can't go down. The soil is terrible. You probably know that. And I believe the first floor will also be parking. So you're talking about access to the boulevard. They will have an in and out. We are also planning a light at Allen and Mendota. And your last thing was to say that I would never approve future buildings. Is that right?
Yes.
I cannot agree to that. We have so many competing demands and stakeholders in the city and in the county and at the state level. For me to make that promise, I would say today would make the city liable, and we would be called to court, and this video would be used against us. That blanket statement is not the approach we need in life. We need to look at what's going on, how we're growing. But we can say we can take a more measured approach. And one of the things I've been saying on mayor panels is, when looking around at other mayors, it's your turn to start your growth. Some of you have paused to watch us grow. And it's time that we pause and let you all grow. And we can grow a little slower and focus on those houses.
Thank you. Anybody else? There's a hand up.
My family would say I don't need this microphone. I have a big enough mouth, but here we go. You have, both of you, have supported a 5-story building on Terrace Avenue, an apartment building, that would require blasting into the hill, which is known as Quarry Hill Conservancy. You both supported it. Some of you chose to change your vote when you realized that it was going to be voted down on the flu map. You changed your vote. We would like to know, if elected, would you continue to support the threat to that conservancy with this building, this 5-story building, which is the last green space in downtown Middleton?
No, that's fine. Thank you for that question. For background, I was one of the older people, well, I serve on the Plan Commission. That development was initially not supported unanimously by the Plan Commission, but when the developer came back with a revised plan that they had worked with staff on to change the orientation of the building so that the blasting to make room for part of the building in the hill would be reduced or even eliminated. When that came back, everybody on the Plan Commission voted in favor of it because we thought it was a great plan to bring more housing to our downtown, reduce the number of trips people would have to make by car because they'd be in the downtown, so they could come to places like Village Green or library, maybe do it on foot or by bike or mobility device. And it would draw business to our downtown area, which is a good thing. I did switch my vote when it came to the council. I voted in favor of allowing the change to go through. And when it became apparent that it was going to fail, I switched my vote as, not to sound nerdy, but it was a Robert's Rule tactic, trying to preserve the opportunity to bring it up at the next meeting. Because when council denies a request like that, and it wasn't an actual development, it was a change to the, sorry to be nerdy, it was a change to the future land use map in our comprehensive plan. But when that was rejected, that meant the developer would have to wait a year to propose something new, even though the council had sort of indicated, bring us back a different plan. Wouldn't have happened. I ultimately was not able to take advantage of an opportunity to revisit that particular development, and nothing has happened since. I point out that the development would replace the old Vern's building, which is now gone. It would have been right across the street from another 5-story apartment building, so it was in character with the neighborhood. It is consistent with our city's plans for infill development, which Mayor Kuhn had mentioned. And it also would have very likely added a 1/4 acre to the Quarry Hill Conservancy, because one of the parcels owned by the developer is in the Conservancy and would no longer be necessary because of the reconfiguration of the design. So it was an opportunity to expand that Conservancy and maybe bring more people to the area to appreciate the Conservancy and advocate for its improvement. And that didn't happen. And I just have to point out, it is not the only green space in the downtown. In fact, technically, it really isn't in the downtown. We do have green space next to City Hall and Vitruvius, where they will have outdoor events. And we, of course, have Stonehorse Green. So.
Thank you. And I appreciate that you asked that question. I echo what Alder Janairo is sharing. And I understand that your neighborhood is creating a Friends of Quarry.
It's already formed.
Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated. For those of you who don't know, you can always go volunteer. I'm sure they need help. I think they're doing some tree brush updates. So much appreciated to your neighborhood. One of the things that I have been thinking about is in taking the concept, and I'm not saying I would move forward with supporting it, but the part to the closest to the house is where the rock formation is, and I think that's where the blasting concern is, although it might be throughout. So that's something I would like to talk to the neighbors about. That was something that Alder Janairo talked about, is reaching out and having these conversations. I haven't reached out to your group, but I have been talking to someone who has, so she's been briefing me. And one of my thoughts, and I told this to the planning director when things stopped moving with that project, was that we own the parking lot next door. Would that, if we could we move it into that parking lot area? Would that lessen the damage to that rock wall and provide more green space? And I say that because sometimes when we're looking at development, we're looking at the actual piece, the square right there, rectangle. But if we look at the land around it, what is within our range? And since the city owns the lot next door to it, can we move it into the parking lot? Because it already has the wall behind, that's the skate park, has the wall behind it. And kind of know where we already have a barrier wall. And could we, and then convert where the Burns Auto Body Shop is, or was, into more green space. That would involve more money from the city to clean up Burns then, because we would be swapping some land. But we also just need to make sure there's enough parking downtown. And if that lot is being utilized all the time, then we just have to think through how to get more parking. But maybe there's a little bit of a land swap so that we can save that hill. Now, that may not work for your group, but it's something that I think is in need of a continued discussion, and see if there's a third way forward. And that's what I would do as mayor.
I just want to quickly follow up on that. So the reconfigured design, or concept, I should say, because they didn't take it to design, it would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. But the reconfiguration actually was going to take advantage of that parking lot. That's something that Abby Attoon, the planning director, had worked with the developer on. So that it would have required the city to sell that land. You know, we didn't even get close to that, because the first thing we needed to do in order for this to move forward was change a future land use map, and we did not. But so that configuration that you're discussing, Mayor, that actually was part of the plan that came before the council. And again, going back to the consultation with the neighbors, that is a very important part of the development process, is to hold neighborhood meetings. And as someone who's been on Plan Commission for 3 years now, I can tell you it is exceptionally rare for a developer to change their plans significantly after hearing concerns expressed by residents. It is just not common. Typically, they'll make small changes if pressed, and I mean pressed. In my district, Pheasant Crossing is going in, and we needed park space. The Parks, Recreation and Forestry Commission recommended park space, and it was not picked up, and eventually we had to ask the developer, make the developer do some changes last minute to fit even a small park in there. So it is not at all common for a developer to be willing to make wholesale changes, like reconfigure the orientation of the building and redesign it. This developer was willing to do that, and I would love to see this developer do something in Middleton, whether it's at that space or not. I think that's exactly the kind of developer we want to have building in Middleton. One of the things, had it gone forward, one of the things I would have advocated strongly for would have been in the, there's one house that they bought that I believe is still standing, Burns is down, but the house next door would come down. I suggested, why not put a community garden there that would be accessible to anybody in the neighborhood? Because we don't have enough community gardens. And what a wonderful thing to have in our downtown that would be accessible to anybody in the area who wants to get a garden plot. So again, that could have been an opportunity. I don't know what will happen with that site in the future. It might be something the city can use for our own affordable housing developments, but we'll see.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions here that were submitted in writing, and so they are both for you. They are for both of you. Well, basically they are the same. Do you have any plans or ideas to reduce or limit the increases in property taxes? Or name one idea that would lower property taxes? And with a request, please do not compare Middleton to other communities. Who wants to go first?
I love talking about property taxes. You know, I'm an economist, and I have to tell you, whenever my math nerdiness gets to come out, I'm so excited. So to whoever my property tax questions folks are, thank you. One of the things that we are blessed by is that decades ago, our forefathers put together a TIF that was outstanding. It's number 3 in the state. And when that closes in April, those businesses will come onto the property rolls, and they will pay taxes at current valuation. So we're looking in 27, maybe not going down in taxes, but maintaining for a long time and still doing more projects and more community events, doing the things that we love to do. It is a special time to be at the helm of the city, to make sure that we are doing judicious things with these taxes. To make sure that our seniors and our working families can stay in their housing, whether they own their property or they're renting. So my one idea would be to make sure that we're growing in a healthy way and keeping an eye on that. The other thing is in 27, we pay off the fire station. I believe it's in 27. And 2 to 3 years later, we pay off the police station. So the reason that that's important is that so many people care about that community campus idea. You know, librarians, they want some updated, things for the library. Senior center needs some things. We also need some infrastructure updates. That's a lot of money. But we're getting some room in that debt ceiling that will allow us to keep doing the things we do every day, like fixing the roads and all the potholes, and still get those buildings updated or redoing a senior center, and keeping taxes here. Now, we might have to go to referendum for the community campus for $100, $150 a year. But if we do that because we're doing it in a methodical manner and we're doing it together. And if that's the case, then our seniors and our working families get to stay where they are and be in the neighborhood and the community that they love.
So nobody likes paying taxes. I don't like paying taxes. But I recognize that the taxes we pay, that's what pays for all of our staff. And it pays for a lot of the things that happen in Middleton. We also have user fees, so our water utility, our sewer utility, our stormwater utility, all the golf course if you use it. These are all paid for with user fees. The state has set up a system under the Republican legislature over a decade ago, whereby the only way municipalities can increase the property tax levy that homeowners and property owners pay is to limit it to what's called net new construction. So when we have new construction going on, that value that's added minus anything that was taken away. That's our net new construction. And it has been around 1.5% to 2.5% for a long time. So in other words, that property tax levy under state law can go up. The city can increase it by that 1.5% to 2% each year. As you might guess, all of our staff make up the bulk of what's paid for by the property taxes. Staff are faced with increasing costs for their own families, so they want reasonable cost of living adjustments, which typically are going to be more than 1.5%. Their insurance, because we provide insurance for them, that's going up much more than 1.5%. So, and then there's inflation. So the things we buy, that's going up too. So the conundrum is that we are only allowed to increase property taxes by this small percentage that is way less than what our actual expenses will increase. So then the question is, what services do we cut? And how do we make that decision? It could be a community conversation. I think it should be. We need to identify what are our actual needs. Is it just roads, or is it also infrastructure for bikes and pedestrians to be able to get around safely? Is it our parks? Who considers parks a need? Maybe people with kids who want to be able to send their kids outside to play. What about our conservancy lands? Is that a need or is that a want? What about Stonehorse Green right next door? Some people might think it's a want. But when you see families building the tradition of something as wonderful as Light the Green every year, it kind of looks like a need. It's bringing our community together. So this is the number one hardest question for anyone in municipal government to address, because we want to continue to meet our needs. Some of those needs may seem like wants to some people, but they're needs to others. How do we make everybody happy with what we have? And how do we continue to add to our services as we grow? So the idea of growing, the more homes we build, that actually increases our ability to raise property taxes. It's sort of maybe counterintuitive. So that additional growth, it's great because we get new property taxes from that new housing, but it also means we can raise those taxes. Now, we don't want to do that. We don't want to price people out of their houses. There are ways we can address the need for more revenue. First one is state aid. Again, nerd alert, state aid is something that we had a little bit of an increase 2 years ago. There was a last year legislation passed that increased the amount of state aid that we get. So this is tax money that all of us pay on various things that the state collects. You may have heard at one point it was a $4 billion surplus, and it was I think $7 billion. That surplus is taxes that we have paid that aren't being spent. So the municipalities, I mentioned Dane County Cities and Villages. I'm also active in the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, which is statewide. Those two groups advocate tirelessly to try to get legislation to change the way state aid is given to municipalities, because we simply are not getting enough aid from the state. If the legislature changes its composition after the November election, we have a really good shot at getting that legislation passed and changing the way state aid flows to municipalities. So that's one thing we can do that won't affect people's bottom line here, except for the good, because we wanted to raise taxes. The other thing is legislation that this would be very specific to, for example, seniors. My mother, who passed away in November, she, for maybe 15 years, took advantage of a program in Illinois where she lived. It's called Circuit Breaker. I think they've changed the name since then. But basically, seniors who had a very low income, which my mother did, seniors who met the income threshold, their property tax would not go up. The tax itself might go up, but the state paid the difference between their fixed amount and what the increase was. That, coupled with the carpenter's pension from the union that my dad was a member of his whole career, that is what allowed my mom to continue to stay in her condo for 20 years after my dad's death. And we don't have anything like that in Wisconsin. I would encourage and work with Senator Hesselbein and the Assembly Minority Leader, Greta Neubauer, and try to get something passed that could emulate that program. Because one of the things that we're worried about anytime we're faced with increasing taxes is the ability to stay in your home. And we certainly want to make sure that seniors can continue to do that.
Thank you. Here.
I would like to give Mayor Kuhn the opportunity to tell us what her proudest moment has been over the last 2 years.
Thank you for that. That's very kind. I would say every day that I empower leaders in City Hall, you can have a lot of thoughts and wanting to do things, but giving them the tools to move things forward. And sometimes it's a little bit of coaching, hearing what they're struggling with, and helping their teams move forward. Showing an outcome of that, though, would be that park on Lake Street. We spent 6 years trying to build it when I was a city councilwoman, and Alder Janairo was a supporter as well. The whole council was. I see Alder Nelson, our president, very big supporter. She's on our Parks Committee. The reason I share that is of the money spent, about 80% of it was under the park. And it was to stop the rainwater carrying all the chemicals off Allen Boulevard into the Lake Mendota. And so sometimes our parks are beautiful places to go, but that one is special because it's stopping the environmental damage. And it's also a great place for the kids that live in the apartments nearby to have a peaceful moment And with the work of the Arts Committee, it chose a beautiful sculpture. And I will say at first I was like, it might be too big. You know, when you see the design on paper, and Alder Nelson was like, it's going to be great. And it'll be fine. And sometimes you just have to have that trust and let the system work through it. Let the committees do their jobs. And the day, the ribbon cutting ceremony, it was just so beautiful. And you could see that vision all coming together. And so within weeks, we saw fish that were this big out there swimming along, and I'd never seen that before. And they were almost playing tag. And that is a fish hatchery area. So we saw an instant turnaround in that local environment, which shows if you work together on vision, that outcome can be instant when you cross that finish line. So thank you for asking.
Question down here.
This is a question for both candidates. What kind of affordable housing will you offer families looking to buy a home in Middleton when all new development seems to be dedicated to high-end apartments that cater to single people or couples based on the size and price point?
Is the question for both?
It is for both.
Thank you.
Thinking about that in two parts. First, there is the housing action plan that is out for comment right now. It is the city's first attempt to come up with an action plan to address our problem with affordable housing. I'll talk about that in a minute. We do actually in my district, District 6, there are dozens and dozens of new homes, actual houses and townhouses going up in Red Tail Ridge and in Pheasant Crossing. So there will be, as these houses continue to be built, opportunities for families to find attainable housing is the phrase that that Red Tail Ridge uses. When my husband and I bought our house here in 2017, we had a price point that we weren't going to go above, and we were very fortunate to get in the market here just at that time, because right now, if we were looking for a house, we would not move to Middleton. We just wouldn't, because we wouldn't be able to afford it. We're faced with a situation where in my neighborhood alone, there are at least maybe a dozen people, houses that are occupied by either empty nesters or soon to be empty nesters like myself, who would happily move to maybe a single story small house or a condo, downsize and prepare to age in place without a split level like I have in my house. But our mortgages are at 2.75%, and it would be crazy for us to move out and take on a new mortgage at a higher rate. So this is a situation I face myself. The housing action plan that the Workforce Housing Committee and the Community Development Authority have put together, which is out for comment now, if people want to check it out on the website and submit comments, that plan is a guide document for how the city can spend around $10.5 million coming from the closure of our tax incremental district, number 3. It's a nerdy thing, and we'll go into it, but it was a wildly successful tax incremental district, one of the most successful in the state, and because of that, we have this $10 million that under state law we can use to support affordable housing in some way. One of the actions that is proposed in there is, and again, council will need to approve this. We'll be voting on April 7th, which is also election day. One of the things in there is to make down payment assistance available to first-time home buyers, or we might even shape it so that it's for maybe veterans, or we have options, and this is all just in draft form right now. But with that down payment assistance, that could make it easier for a family to be able to afford a home in Middleton. We also want to, ideally, again, this is all tentative, we want to be able to build that missing middle housing, so condos. Condos are just not built anymore. The way the federal government has structured financing for condos, it is almost impossible for a builder to do it and not lose money. So we want to figure out, is there a way that we can help with that funding stack through this affordable housing fund that we'll be setting up, and perhaps get some condos developed right here in Middleton, so that people like me who have done the home ownership, I've built the equity, I'm ready to start downsizing and not always shoveling snow or snow blowing. You know, I'm ready to relax at some point. To make it possible for people like me to vacate our housing so that more families can come in and be able to walk to Northside Elementary and a park and the Conservancy. So those are just some of the ways that we're actively trying to bring more affordable homeowner occupied housing to Middleton. And as you've observed, the market right now is just mainly there satisfying the need for apartments. And we see the lack of certain types of housing, including apartments for people who aren't, not luxury apartments, people who make far less than the average median income. We want to address that market failure through this fund.
I love this question. Affordable housing is such a hot topic, and as Alder Janairo talked about with the closure of TIF, we have this one-year extension to work on this, and that's one of the things I asked council and the city staff to consider, a multi-pronged approach. One of them is to help seniors. One of them is to help our families who want to move from renting to a house or are new to the county and are surprised. We see this often with our public safety. You know, we hire a new police officer, they're so excited to start, but then they can't find housing here. And if that is part of our starter families, those are the people we want, you know, to stay, but all of our families who want to be here. The reason I talk about this is there's been some steps that we have taken, like Alder Janairo was talking about with that one-year plan. I think you talked about the zoning changes that we did so we could do smaller plots. Did you cover that part? Okay. So one of the things that I did with making zoning more progressive is that you no longer needed, say, 1/4 of an acre for a house. You could do a smaller lot of land, which is why Red Tail Ridge has smaller, you know, size lots. Also helpful for not doing too much mowing, maybe a little. Some people want a little patch of grass. But I share that because land prices are so high that's part of the reason the house cost is much higher. Part of the issue is that there's not a lot of supply on the market. So when I started as mayor, we only had 3 houses for sale at any given time. One of them was 600,000, one is $1 million on average. If you got something affordable, it was under 500,000, generally needed a lot of updates. That's not healthy for the market. So one of the things I worked with the planning commission and with the planning department was to get a lot of supply moving, and that's through zoning change. But in saying that, 500,000 or 450 is not affordable to a working family. And so part of what I'm thinking about is can we use land trust so that we can do houses? We own a couple of property, like parking lots that are underutilized in different parts of the city. And can we release those lots to build on? Because right now they're empty parking lots. And we can put small homes on there that are for families. And that is my 2 plans besides affordable housing plan for next year. It'll be a lot of fun.
Keep it not too long, please.
Okay. Just a clarification. So the housing action plan is actually a 10-year plan funded by a one-year extension of our tax incremental district or TID. So it's not, we don't have to spend the money in just 1 year. It is a 10-year plan, and the funding results from the final year of taxes that would have been charged to all the property that are located in the TID. And it should also be noted that that funding can be used, and in fact the Housing Action Plan is for the entire city. It's not just the area that was encompassed by the TID. Mayor Kuhn mentioned the high cost of land. One of the possibilities that we looked at for the Housing Action Plan, again, looking to other municipalities to see how are they handling the same problems that we face. And through the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, I was connected with this program in Sheboygan Falls, city right next to Sheboygan, and they have a place called Founders Point. And one of the things they did, they sought money from employers in the area, so 4 employers each gave $2 million, and then the county gave $2 million. And they're putting up, again, attainable housing. And the idea is to limit the mortgages. I think they originally wanted $275,000, but then they had to go higher just because of costs. But the home buyers can use the value of the land itself as their down payment. That's something that they incentivize through this program. So Sheboygan Falls is blessed with a lot of vacant land. Middleton is not, so it might be harder for us to transfer something like that to Middleton, but it is an idea that we are aware of and are considering.
Thank you.
Hi, how's it going? I'm just wondering, what is each of your reasons for not allowing the town of Middleton to move into the town village of Middleton? There's been pushback from the city of Middleton. Madison's approved it, and you guys are really the only ones kind of throwing a hiccup to the process. So, just wondering if you could explain each of your rationale for this reason, for your reasoning. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say I am not opposed to the town of Middleton becoming the village of West Middleton. I do trust our city administrator and our city attorney to be looking out for the best interests of our city. I know that the town, the western area is contiguous. To me, it makes sense that that would be the village of West Middleton. But there are numerous, I think there are over 30 islands where it might be just like 1 or 2 houses surrounded by City of Middleton or City of Madison. I think for me, and I haven't read the briefings that our city attorney prepared, but for me, those islands are a problem, and we should be able to incorporate those and connect those islands into Middleton or Madison. And if the town is willing to let us do that, that's fine. But I'm not in principle opposed to letting them go forward with their incorporation.
Thank you for that question. Can I ask, are you from the town?
I am.
Okay, thank you. For everyone that, you said yes. Yes. I'm glad you're asking that question, because sometimes there are discussions online or assumptions, not you personally, but I'll see this on Nextdoor and stuff. And it comes down to a little bit of a definition in my mind. And Alder Janairo spoke to that. But I'm going to step back for a minute, because I had heard that I was against it for like 1.5 years, and I was like, I've never publicly said that. Like, that's, I don't know who got that. I understand Town Middleton people might feel that way. But when Westport came forward to do the same process, it was the first time I heard that Westport was interested, and I said, let's have coffee. Let's sit down. What's your goals? Let's talk through it. And they wanted us to basically clean up their borders and do good service to the people that live along their boundaries with Middleton. And we moved forward, and that's actually, I think that was about a year and a half ago, and they're going to, they've had a public hearing last week. They're moving forward to the DOA, I think in the next 60 days, for that to happen. So it's possible to move forward. Now, I will say that when I met with your town chair at the Capitol, along with our representatives, I made it clear that we just want a clean border. And that was the same thing I asked of the town of Westport. You know, so that it makes sense when you're dealing with snowplows long term, but especially our police. We have this problem in Madison, or at the Madison border. When I was the city councilwoman, it's Allen and University. One of those neighborhoods, it's every third house is the city of Madison. And it depends on which side of the road you're in. So when I would do leaflets my first year, I would hand out, and I didn't know it, but I was handing out leaflets to Madisonians who couldn't vote for me. Yeah. If I have a hard time handing those out, how do the police deal with that? And I say that because what I found out over the years was that police would arrive from Madison and Middleton, and they would talk for 2 minutes to figure out, okay, this 2 cars hit right here. It technically is Madison. All right, we'll step back. How many resources are we using in these moments? Luckily, everyone's okay in these situations, and they can take those 2 minutes. But we need snowplows to be able to function effectively. We need police to be able to arrive and know which jurisdiction it is. So these islands do become a concern. Also, there is an old discussion of needing a main street in the town of Middleton. That's part of the definition. I've heard that that's been relaxed at the state level, so that may no longer be an issue. But I fully support the town of Westport moving forward. I think as long as the town of Middleton presents a thoughtful attempt at cleaning up borders, which is a lot of these islands, and how we can work cooperatively long-term with those operations. And if there is an island because there's a house, our snowplow will clear it. We're already doing 90%, that's fine. If there's little tiny hiccups, I'm cool with that. But if they're coming forward and saying, we'll give you nothing and we want everything, we'll let the process unveil. And so as long as people are willing to come together, just like Westport did, we can do this. We can move forward together. And I would just ask that we bargain in good faith. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody who has not asked a question yet? Otherwise, we are going to wrap this up. Okay. Here's one.
You probably both are aware of the Go Big Read program at UW-Madison. You probably both are aware of the Go Big Read program at UW-Madison. Every year, the chancellor identifies one book for the whole community to read together, and it's a way to bring people together. And then they plan a lot of events around the book. So my question for you, in the spirit of community in Middleton, would you support having a Go Big Read for Middleton? And if so, what would be the book you would select?
Yes, I'm familiar with the Go Big Read. I think this year is a James. Yes, yes. I absolutely would support it, and maybe it could be the Go Middle Read or something. And to answer the question of what would I pick, I guess it would depend on how young are we going with this, because things that cross my mind are The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, right? But that might be too intense. I used to chair the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the League of Women Voters of Dane County. Did this during the pandemic, and I got really involved in their book clubs. And I hosted a book discussion on Zoom of Richard Rothstein's The Color of Law, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America. That, I think, is a great book. I think even high school students would be able to read that book and take something from it. It is just so well written. If you haven't read it, check it out. It's really amazing, and it was an eye-opener for me. So that would be my choice.
Thank you for sharing that, and I would second your idea for the Go Mid-Read. We'll work on that naming, but great idea. I've mentored over 100 people in federal service who are mid-level to executives, and when I spend time mentoring and coaching, I ask people to take on challenging assignments, to stretch themselves and to lead, and to grow themselves and how they are thoughtful, but especially working through logistics. So the book that I recommend is called Rising Tide, and it's actually about the 1927 flood of the Mississippi and how it changed America. So it turns out it's how a lot of people actually moved to the north. The reason, it was the push. The jobs were the pull, but every community responded differently. And there were leaders who rose to the challenge. In that moment, they took care of the people that lived there, and those people chose to stay and raise their families. And there were other people, when they had the environmental damage, chose to go because their leaders did not stand up for them. So I highly recommend the book.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. Thanks for the candidates. Thanks to the candidates for coming. Thanks to the jury. Please don't forget to tip your wait staff. If the candidates hang around, maybe if you want to have one-on-one conversations with them, I'm not going to stand in the way, obviously. That's up to them now. So, anyway, thank you very much for coming.